So let's do another problem. How many grams of N2 can be made from 9.05 grams of NH3 reacting with 45.2 grams of CuO? And I have the equation. All right, so what am I looking for? I want the grams of N2. So I found my equation because I like to write things underneath. And I said I'm looking for this and I want it in grams. So I'm looking for the grams of this guy. Okay. What did they give me? So they gave me the 9.05 grams of NH3 and they told me how much it is reacting with my CuO. And that's it. So I want to know how much of this is going to be made, and they gave me these two. So then you say, well, where do I start? Because they gave me two things. Anytime you write the amount under two of your reactants, this is where the big flags, red flags should pop off or lights should shine saying, hey, something seems wrong. Because how do I know which one is going to limit how much I make? Okay? I don't know which one is my bread and which one's my cheese. So anytime that you have two of your reactants mass, this is a limiting reactant problem, okay? Anytime you're given two of these, it's a limiting reactant. Now some problems might tell you the mass of this and they say an excess of this. Well, if they say it's an excess, then they're telling you this is the excess reactant, that's the limiting. But if they give you the masses of both, then you don't know. So the first step you have to do is to figure out who's the limiting reactant, okay? So to figure out the limiting reactant, it's the same steps every single time. I have to take him and I go to my product. And I want to go to this product because that's the one I'm going to be asked about. Then I want to take this one, go to product, and see which one gives me the least amount. Okay? So I have 9.05 grams of NH3. I want to go from NH3 to N2. The only way I could go from him to him is through the mole. So I have grams, but I want moles. So I go from grams of NH3 to moles of NH3. Okay? So I want to go from grams to moles. How do I go from grams to moles? The weight. I go on the periodic table, find the mass of N, find the mass of H, add it all up, and that gives me 17.03. Does it go on top or bottom? Bottom. So now I have moles of NH3. So now that I'm in moles, I can go from one guy to the other. So moles of NH3 go on the bottom. Who I'm trying to go to goes on top. Excuse me. So now I need to talk about how they relate. How does NH3 and N2 relate? It's a 2-to-1 ratio. So every 2 NH3s, I have 1 N2. So now I'm in N2, so now I can just do the math. And I get 0.266 moles of N2. All right, so I took one reactant, I went to product. I do the exact same thing, but with this guy, I go to product. 45.2 grams of CuO. I don't want grams, I want moles, so grams of CuO go on the bottom, moles go on top. Grams to moles is the mass on the periodic table, so I go on the periodic table, add it up, I get 79.55. He goes on the bottom. Grams cancel, I have moles. I don't want moles of CuO, I want to get to N2, so now I can switch, because I can only switch when we're in moles. What's that relationship? From CuO to N2. Here it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So for 3 CuOs, I have 1 N2. So it's a 3-to-1. 3 CuOs, 1 N2. So now I have moles of N2. Put that in the calculator and I get 0.189 moles of N2. So which one gives me the least amount? So this is 0.266, this is 0.189. So this is the least amount. So that makes this my limiting reactant. But it didn't ask me who my limiting reactant is. This asked me how much N2 am I going to make. So I know how much I'm going to make based on which one ever is the least. So this is my theoretical yield. This is how much I'm going to make, not that one. It's the lower one. So this is how much N2 I'm going to make. So am I done? I know how much N2 I'm going to make because I picked the lower one. But I asked in the problem for grams. So once I've figured out who is my limiting reactant, how much I'm actually going to make, now I have to put him in the correct units. Okay? So I take the limiting reactant, I take his amount, 0.189 moles of N2, and now I want to put it in grams because the problem asks for it in grams. So I want to go from moles of N2 to grams of N2. How do I go from moles to grams? Periodic table. It's N2, so 2 times the mass of N. N is 14, so that gives me 28, top or bottom? Top. So now I have grams of N2. Do the math, and this would be my final answer. So this would be my amount of N2 in grams that would be created because it came from my limiting reactant. Okay, so it's a limiting reactant problem because they gave me the mass of the first two. I take this one, go to product. Take this one, go to product. Whichever one's the smaller number is my answer, and then I make sure it's in the correct units before I say I'm done. All right, so that's limiting reactant. The last thing we need to cover in Chapter 7 are types of reactions. I've already talked about combustion a lot, but let's talk about a few other ones, all right? So that's what we'll do on the next lecture.